All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. And Martyn, nice big pitch behind us here at Rochdale.
Great, yeah.
Different environment. Can you introduce our guest for us?
It's always nice to be somewhere new, isn't it? And we are in a new place today. And it's our pleasure to introduce Andy Mazey, who is the chairman of Rochdale Hornets. And it's no surprise that, therefore, we're at the Rochdale Hornets Stadium, the Crown Oil Arena, as it's now called. It used to be Spotland, of course. And we've got the pitch behind us. And it's a beautiful sight, Andy. And it's actually a very pleasant day today, isn't it, as well? Yeah. So it looks great, and it's just being mown. And I think there was a football game here last night because you share the place with the Rochdale Football Club. And I believe it's a very happy arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you for having me on board today. And as you say, the sun's shining, and we're looking forward to summer. Everything's rosy at the moment, isn't it? We've had a good start to the year. Football club are doing well, and relationships are good. So all good at the moment. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 from 2 to start the season. 2 pretty big wins though as well. So you're sitting at top of the table at the moment. Yeah,
we've had you always want to start well, don't you? And to be fair, in my time at Rochdale, 5 years now, we haven't really had a good start to a season, so it makes a change, and a refreshing change as well. But the boys have done really well. We've managed to build on last year's performances and some consistency and good retention and recruitment. And there's a good continuity at the club, and it's shown by a good start. But we're not getting carried away. Obviously, 2 rounds in, there's some tough games to come. It's a really competitive competition, League One this year, and there's some really good sides that are spending, significant sums of money in this comp this year. So certainly won't be getting carried away with ourselves, and we know that there's some, the real challenges lie ahead.
One thing about the League One competition this year, though, Andy, is that Oldham are not in it, and they obviously dominated last year, didn't they? I think they only lost 1 game at Keighley. It looks a more even contest this year, and some of the previously lower clubs seem to have spent quite a bit to try and, improve themselves. I'm thinking of Midlands Hurricanes, North Wales Crusaders. They're not the easy beats that perhaps at one time they might have been seen as.
No, and I've said this many times in recent months, the competition is probably the most open it's been, but also the most strongest competition that I've certainly been involved in. And I think from, if you look at it, there's probably 8 or 9 clubs that will all fancy the chances of being in the playoffs, or the middle eights as it is now come the end of the year. So really good comp, and hopefully it gets the media attention and the respect it deserves this year, because it is a fantastic competition, and there's a lot of really good players that, either ex-Super League players, top-end Championship players that have dropped down, or young lads that are making the name for themselves and will become Super League players. So it's an important part of the pathway and the pyramid for this sport, and hopefully, this year it gets the recognition it deserves.
And one of the things that ought to be emphasised much more than it is the fact that of all the 3 professional competitions, in terms of the England, League One has the biggest national footprint. It goes right from Cornwall in the remote far southwest, obviously, up to Newcastle, and it includes Workington and Whitehaven in Cumbria, and Midlands Hurricanes in Birmingham, and so on. It's really geographically, it's. I mean, it must be quite a challenge for you to afford to go to all those places.
I was just going to come in and say, don't tell me about it. We pick the coach bills up for it. But no, I mean, it is geography-wise, it's a big spread across the UK, isn't it? And there's a lot of developing areas within that, and new areas for the sport as well. When you look at Newcastle, I know they've had difficulties the last couple of seasons, but the work that they've done in the community over the previous years, there's a good infrastructure for rugby league up there. Cornwall are working hard. They've come through some difficulties. So
that was your last home game, wasn't it, Cornwall?
It was, yeah. So great competition, really, from Midlands are obviously trying to embed the game in Birmingham, aren't they? And
absolutely,
Mike, I get on Mike with Mike over there, and he's doing his best to try and grow the
Crabtree
game.
now is working as their, I think he's the chief executive, isn't he?
He is, and they're investing in not just in the club but in the sport in that area, which needs recognition and needs support, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And just for reference for our viewers and listeners, we are talking about results that have happened in the last 2 weeks, but this episode has been filmed, by the time it goes to air, last week. So this will go for us in the present next Wednesday, Martyn. So
fortunately, Rochdale don't have a game this weekend because it's a Challenge Cup, and unfortunately, you're not in it anymore.
No, the feet will be up this weekend.
Yes,
that's all right. Nice sometimes to have a bye or a week off early in the season just to rest some of those niggles. But how about we take it right back to the start, mate? So I learnt before the podcast, you grew up in Leigh. Were you born in Leigh, or?
Yeah, I'm one of the rare breed that was actually born in Leigh, because I think the year after I was born, the maternity ward was closed. So everybody else from Leigh.
You were that bad, were you?
Well, you became a Wiganer the year after I was born, because you'd be born in Wigan if you was from Leigh. So
right.
I'm one of those who can actually say I was born in Leigh, and I'm a real Leither, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was where it all started for me, yeah.
Were you a player as a kid? Did you play rugby league as a youngster?
I did. I played through the junior age groups, and I played, obviously, school rugby, school boys, for the Leigh Miners Club, the Rangers as they were and still are. Played a bit of schoolboy rugby over in France, so very much I got to, I did well and enjoyed the game, but then I reached a certain age and realised you needed to be a little bit tougher than I was to carry on to the the next level.
What position did you play, Andy?
I was a 9, half-back stroke 9, yes. So
right.
I've put a bit of timber on over the years, but I was only very slight in my younger days, and a nippy little half-back stroke hooker, yeah.
No, nice, mate. So I guess what happened for you after you sort of, obviously went through high school? Did you go to university, or did you go straight into the workforce, mate?
No, I took the route where I think I was fortunate to come from a great family, and my father and my mum and dad, they both recognised that I probably wasn't going to go that academic route, and so my dad was really careful to ensure I got a good grounding and an apprenticeship. I went straight into an apprenticeship as an electrician, and that's where basically my business is today, are electrical contracting primarily.
Right.
And, that's been me. I always thank my parents for directing me in that way, because I've had a degree of success, and it's paved the way for a good life.
You can't beat a good family, can you? That's the point.
No, and I've been fortunate in that respect, and I always try and remember that and pay respect to that wherever I can, because I think it's important, and it's great. I think you see a lot of the kids nowadays, who they don't possibly get that as much as what we did back in the day, and it's important that you do get that grounding and support from your family, isn't it?
But presumably, Andy, as you were building up your business, you also got involved initially with Leigh, didn't you, with Derek Beaumont back in, I think you said it was 2013 or thereroabouts?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, obviously that's quite a challenge, because if you're building a business, that takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of care and dedication. But then to be involved with a professional rugby league club is also very demanding, isn't it?
It is, and I think what you usually end up involved in this sport, I find, not by design but by chance, really. And at the time, if I wind back to 2012, whenever it was, it seems a long time ago now. But
I bet it does, yeah.
I was doing a bit of sponsorship at Leigh, because obviously I'm a lifelong Leigh supporter, and we ended up, the club hit financial difficulties at that point. Derek wasn't involved, and it just came together as a consortium. Derek, I was involved with Derek and a couple of other guys, and at the time we sort of turned that round a little bit. They were struggling in Championship, crowds of 1,200, which when you look at what Derek's done since, and the Leopards rebrand and where they are now, you wouldn't believe it was only, 12, 13 years ago, they were struggling in mid-table Championship with crowds of 1,200 and no money in the bank. So it's been a remarkable journey for Leigh, hasn't it? And but yeah, I got involved just as a sponsor, ended up in the boardroom supporting Derek and some of the other guys that at the time we just all sort of chipped in and did our bit for the club as local guys do. And Derek wanted to take it in a direction that he's taking it in. Full respect to him for that, and And you've got to give credit where it's due. He's done a fantastic job, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm. He certainly has. But I mean, eventually, I think you left Leigh, didn't you? But presumably, you've been bitten by the bug of being involved, behind the scenes in a club and as a director, because you then moved to Swinton, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, Derek's quite headstrong. I'm quite headstrong, and we've laughed about and joked about it in recent months, and since then. At the time, we did lock horns a little bit, and it was sort of Derek had the bigger bank balance and the bigger wallet than I did, and he took it forward. And I made connections at that point with people like John Duffy and Stuart Littler, who then moved on to Swinton. And I just ended up sponsoring over at Swinton, doing a bit for the lads initially. And then again, Swinton hit on hard times and just ended up being roped into supporting them in the boardroom, and ended up buying the club off the previous chairman and putting it back on the straight and narrow and getting it moving again.
Yeah, and playing at Haywood Road in Sale. And that was quite crucial to how your tenure turned out at Swinton, wasn't it? Because obviously the club has a really incredible historic name. Swinton, certainly when I was growing up, meant a lot in rugby league, and they played at an iconic stadium, Station Road in Swinton, which I remember because I'm old enough to remember it, but many people now won't. But of course they don't play in Swinton anymore, and your thought at the time was that it would be a good idea to rebrand them as Manchester rather than Swinton, and that did cause some outrage among some supporters, didn't it?
It did, and obviously at the time we felt that, because obviously I came in 2017, and the club was, being brutally honest about it, was 48 hours away from administration, potential liquidation, and we took that situation, got a grip of it, turned it round. We had a difficult year in 18, but then 19 we'd managed to recruit a lot better, put a lot firmer plans in place, and we moved the club forward in 2019 to a point with the lowest central funding at the time. We got to 9th place in the championship. We brought through players who are now playing Super League, in the likes of Frankie Holton, Matty Ashton. We had a really good squad, and I just felt that as Swinton, doing what we were doing, playing out of Sale, it didn't feel right, and I didn't feel we could do anything more with it or take it any further. They've since sort of struggled to stay in Championship and are now down in League One with us. So to a degree, I suggest, you'd say that probably, I was right in that assumption that we couldn't go any further. And I just felt that we either did something different, embraced a new way forward and put a new vision in place, and unlock the potential of being because Swinton, we've had conversation in the past, Martyn. Swinton is a club that can claim to be a Manchester club. It's an M27 postcode. It was in previous years, it was classed as under the Manchester umbrella. So I felt it was an opportunity. I felt it was a new direction. But sometimes not everybody wants to go with you.
No.
Unfortunately, we didn't get it.
No,
through.
History has a big bearing on some people's opinions, doesn't it? Even if the history has sort of changed and the club is in a different place compared to what it used to be. But what was it like playing at Haywood Road, sharing with Sale?
Very good. The relationship with Sale FC was fantastic. Had we moved forward as Manchester Lions, they were invested in that, to be honest. They would have been a big part of that. We didn't plan on moving location.
No.
We would have ran that club from Sale still, and the exec and the committee over there were really invested in what we were doing. So I presume to this day they still play there and the relationships will be good. But it's a nice ground. I think in the past they've played Premiership Rugby Union there with
for that size of club, though. It's good, isn't it, at Haywood Road?
It is. And you don't need to get that big of a crowd on to create a real good atmosphere. If we ever got to a point where we were 1,000 people plus, it was a real good atmosphere at Haywood Road. But that said, obviously in the new era of IMG and grading criteria, I'm not sure how well that stadium would score when you put it up against something like we've got here in Rochdale. But certainly a really good relationship, and couldn't have wished for more support from Sale at the time. Yeah,
but you've been 5 years now at Rochdale, which is a challenge, isn't it? It's not a particularly well. It should be a much better supported club than it is. And I remember, again, because I'm knocking on a bit, I remember the old days of the athletic grounds and going to a game when Rochdale beat Leeds in, I think it was the John Player Trophy at the Old Athletic Grounds with a massive crowd, and the crowd singing their heads off, in triumph and so on. And it would be nice to get that sort of feeling back again, wouldn't it, for this club? Because again, they're a historic club. They've got a fantastic history, but at the moment you're battling through difficult times.
We have been, yeah. We're on the upward curve now. Thankfully, it's been certainly four really tough years. But I'd like to think we're on, a far more positive trajectory with the club now. And for everything you say there, history's fantastic, but we looked at Rochdale and it wasn't just a case of it's got a fantastic history. There's a lot of, the building blocks, as I've always called them from day one. The borough itself is a greater Manchester borough, Rochdale. It's one of the 10 boroughs of Manchester. It's 230,000 plus people strong. There's only the two professional teams, ourselves and the football club, in that borough.
If you could just get 1% of those people, that'd be 2,300, wouldn't
absolutely.
It?
We score, for example, on the IMG grading catchment.
We
score really highly. So we've got a really strong community club in Rochdale Mayfield, one of the finest in the country, if not the finest in the country, who've brought through people like Matty Ashton, who we speak about, Matty Lees at St Helens. So the player pathway is there. There's the Hotwood Hornets college development team, which comes under it's RFL accredited with ourselves. Matt Callan coaches over there. That again has been a fantastic pathway for players to the professional game. So there's a lot of, and facilities wise, we've got fantastic facilities, and we're really fortunate to have a local council that backs its sporting club. So there's a real lot of positives in Rochdale that really attracted me to the club, and I believe that can be the cornerstone of future success.
Yeah, you were saying you'd like to get the crowds up to 1,500 to meet the next sort of IMG grading hurdle in terms of attendances. Do you think that's an aim that you can achieve?
We can achieve it. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be difficult, and it'll involve us losing money. We're going to lose money to do that. We've accepted that by essentially, for most of the games and the bigger games this year, we're going to let people in for nothing, which from a business perspective, is not ideal. You wouldn't want to be doing. But as a board, we understand, and as owners of the club, we understand that we've got to, address the key issue, not just for Rochdale, but a lot of clubs in the sport, and the sport generally is participation, more numbers and more people and eyeballs. So we're going to do our bit, certainly. We will hit the 1,500. However we do it this year, we will hit that target. I'm very confident we will, because we've got 4 games and events this year which we're pretty confident will have crowds in excess of 2,000, which will obviously lift the seasonal average.
Games against other local teams, or
we've targeted not just the local games, because unfortunately in this competition, as you said, there's not many local games. But Swinton on Good Friday, as an example, it's the Easter weekend, bank holiday. We're really going strong on that one.
Right.
We've picked out 4 key events this year, which we've really marketed and we're promoting hard. You'll have seen with the 1,500 project, we've gone out to every school in the Rochdale borough. We've also hit the neighbouring borough of Bury. Nice. With all the sporting clubs and community clubs within the borough are giving access to promotional codes and free tickets. So we're really going strong on 4.
Are you getting much
games.
of a response then, Andy? Are you finding people are responding to what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we knew early days that the first one, the Keighley game, would probably be difficult, as it was the first round. Weather was very poor. We'd only within the fortnight before launched the promotion, so the belief was that as the season goes on, we will see the results will start to come, and I'm pretty confident we can see bookings already on the ticketing system for games that wouldn't normally have bookings. So there's early results and early signs of green shoots, and I think we're invested in it. It's going to cost us money, as I say. We're actually turning away gate money, if you like. We know it's going to have a financial impact, but we're certainly as an owner of a club and my board and colleagues, we're willing to underwrite that for the future success of the club.
The key thing when you give tickets away or at a very reduced price is to persuade those people that actually it's then worth paying for, the going rate, whatever that might be. which can be difficult because, of course, if they come on a freebie, then they might expect to come on a freebie every week, mightn't they?
That's always the fear, and probably the reason why I've resisted doing it over the 5 years I've been here up to now, because my involvement with Leigh and with Swinton and now with Rochdale, over those years I've pretty much tried to try every initiative you could, really, from freebies to £5 tickets, £10 tickets, different offers, promotions. I think the reality is now what we're doing with this is giving a product as well. We've got to have a team that's playing well on the field. We've also got to have other things going on off the field. So, you know, we've changed the way we do things in the stadium now. On match days, we've got Hooper's Hive, which is a child zone with PlayStations in, things that kids can do. Because the reality is, if you've got younger children, they don't necessarily want to sit in a stand and watch rugby league. The parents might want to, so we've got DBS staff who can look after the children in a safe environment. The families are in and around them, but they can watch the game, have a drink, a bite to eat, and the children are safe in a safe zone as well. So it's about looking at it differently for me, creating match day events, creating other things around the periphery of the game rather than just the game.
The thing is, Andy, and that's fabulous what you've just been saying, but when I was a kid, the thing that made me want to go to games was that I absolutely hero worship Neil Fox at Wakefield. I brought up near Wakefield, and from a very early age I was a Wakefield Trinity fan. And to me, I used to go as a very small kid and just sort of stand by the fence and just watch Neil Fox and then Derek Turner. All those players who played for Wakefield for me were heroic figures, really. And ultimately, to get kids involved in our sport, we've got to create those heroic figures everywhere.
Absolutely.
And I just wonder, if we're going to talk about the squad that you've got here at the moment, which of those players would you recommend to young people in Rochdale that they ought to come and watch and ultimately try to emulate?
Well, and I fully agree with you on that. I think as a sport we need to create the profile of our players and elevate them to a different level than they currently are. But in terms of Rochdale at the minute, we had a good season, as I referred to before, last year, and we've got the League One Young Player of the Year here, a lad called Lewis Elson. He's electric, he's got pace, he's an athletic looking lad, and for me that's the kind of person, he lives a good life off the field.
To be the face of the club, in a sense.
You want to put in front of your young people. There's others here, we've got guys who've played at a higher level, Dwayne Straffer, there's lads, Martyn Ridyard's here, Greg McNally.
Martyn will never stop playing.
No, he won't, and he's coaching with us now, Martyn. He's a valuable asset to Rochdale in terms of, he's injured at the moment, but the value he brings from a coaching perspective. But people like Greg McNally, he's played Super League, he's played internationally. These are the guys that at our
level,
really. You've got to get, he's a family man. He's a really clean living guy. He works in education. These are the kind of characters that you want around young people, and you want young people to look up to, aren't they?
No, definitely. And on just off the back of the success you experienced last year, did you notice an uptick in interest, whether it be on social media or just coming to the game in general? Because I noticed, for instance, I think you might have retweeted that a fan had put a tweet out saying that on the back of Las Vegas, they ran into two fans in the stands here at a Rochdale match who had just come to watch the local team off the back of what they watched in Vegas. Just little things like that. Do you find that having an impact on crowd attendances?
I do. I've seen that not just here but in the past. I think you can certainly ride on when the sport's in a healthy place and on the crest of a wave, you can jump on that, can't you? And this is where I believe I'm strong. Although I'm obviously Rochdale and my focus is on Rochdale, I'm strong and passionate about growing the game and the game itself growing and being on a bigger, better platform, because ultimately we're all stronger. Collectively we can all gain from the sport being in a better place, can't we? And the Las Vegas thing I thought was fantastic. I think that hopefully we can build on that, because it took the game again. It took, as I saw Cruz Lehman and Matty Ashton on a different platform to what I've seen any Super League players in recent years, and just that association with the NRL and with some of the the higher profile characters in in other parts of the world. I think it's key that we do grow this game and get the brands on a bigger and better platform.
And do you think? I mean, obviously, that sort of in a way takes us on to the RFL as the central governing body, and there's been some ructions recently, as we know. Simon Johnson, the chairman, has resigned, and Nigel Wood is going to step in as the interim chairman. And there are various reasons why the clubs weren't happy with Simon's chairmanship. I don't think it's anything to do with Simon as a person. I think he's a very honourable guy and a very good chairman of meetings, I'm told. Obviously, he's been effective in that role. But the clubs seem to want somebody who's got probably a clearer commitment to rugby league at all levels, a greater knowledge of it at all levels, and somebody who can hopefully deal with some of the problems. And the main problem, of course, being that the amount of broadcasting income the game has generated has dropped alarmingly, hasn't it? And your distribution as a League One club has been whittled away to virtually nothing, to be honest.
Over the recent years, yeah, it certainly has. And I just echo your sentiments on Simon. I've always had a great relationship with him, and he let's not forget he's taken the game through some difficult, choppy waters with a pandemic and obviously with significant TV revenue drops and things. So I think, credit to Simon, he's done that. But I think you're quite right. I think we've got to get a new vision for this game, and I think there was a hope that the start of the IMG era would be that new dawn. Maybe Super League clubs are wanting to take more control over the way the game goes, and I think there's a general level of support across the game for that. And we all want to see this sport be what it can be and be, live its potential that it's got. And I think there's possibly been a concern or a fear that we're not quite heading in the right direction.
Well, we've been losing ground. I mean, one example of that is that the wages of top players in Super League have not risen significantly for many, many years. They play the hardest game in the world, in my opinion, maybe apart from boxing, which is arguably an even tougher sport. But they don't particularly get well remunerated compared to other sportsmen for playing this incredible sport, do they? And that's the point. You've got to, you look at other sports around the world that are comparable, and their income profile has risen much more sharply than ours, and that's got to be unacceptable.
It has to be where we are currently with the level of income and the distributions throughout the game. They're not, certainly where we are in Rochdale now, the money that we receive, why it's nice to have, it doesn't touch the sides, it doesn't fund the club. So
it's a couple of rounds of drinks, I would think. Yeah,
I mean, it's one of those. It's not significant enough to help us, really significantly advance the club. So that's on us. We've got to grow our own club, and I accept that responsibility. But if we want to grow as a sport, and we want to be on a different platform and go to another level, it's very simple economics. We've got to get more money through the door, haven't we?
If you could give Nigel a bit of advice, Andy, what is there any advice you would give him as he's going to be taking over as the chair, at least for a period?
It looks that way. So, I mean, in terms of Nigel, again, I've never had a bad experience with Nigel. I know that public perception-wise, if we're talking honestly, there's a lot of people. I read the Twitter pages and some of the social media, and it may not be a popular decision with all, but I'll be clear. I'm really honest about things. We voted for the resolutions for change. We've supported on that because I believe that and let's be clear. All we've voted for at this stage is to put in an interim chairman and to do a whole game review. And that's all we're doing at this point. And I'm just hopeful that review process can involve as many stakeholders as possible. And I'm sure Nigel will get out to all, not just the Super League clubs, Championship, League One, get out to the community game, talk to all the stakeholders, and let's get it right this time. If we are guilty of anything, it's probably too many changes. I think whatever we do now, this decision's been made to go in a different direction. or at least to review the game and potentially go in a different direction. And my advice to Nigel would be just consult everybody you can, do as much due diligence, do as much homework as you can over the next couple of months, and let's come up collectively as a sport, let's come up with something that, ultimately puts us on a different level and gets the profile where we need it to be and get us some more finance through the door so that we can grow everything, can't we?
Do you think the contract with IMG should be renegotiated? The trouble is, we've not seen it, have we? I don't think.
No. I think in terms of IMG, I'm in two minds. I think we've got to have performance criteria. I think we've got to be. There's got to be a way of measuring growth and measuring who's doing what and what the who ultimately we're looking at who's been successful and measuring that, aren't we? And we've got to have that. But equally, I'm not sure whether the grading system is where it needs to be and what it is intended to be. I think when you're talking about looking at this facility, for example, there's 10 within the stadium pillar, in the facilities pillar. There's 10 pillars and criteria is divided into 10. This stadium ticks 9 of those boxes, and the reason, and I lose a full point on stadium by virtue of the fact that the gantry, which is suitable for all the major broadcasters, has hosted FA Cup games, Tottenham Hotspur. The gantry is 5 metres too short. I lose a full stadium point for that. So that sums up to me.
Yeah.
Does that tell you that we're doing things right? Because I've got a stadium here that is more than adequate for the division we're in. It's more than adequate for the division above, and is probably better than 50% of the Super League clubs. But I fail. I lose a full point on stadium for the size of my gantry.
Amazing. Yeah.
So
that's the thing. We've got to keep raising those standards to make it seem like, not seem like. We've got to keep, I guess, trying to reach that professionalism, You look in the NRL, the facilities they've obviously got heaps of money behind them, but their clubs are always trying to reinvest. But just on that, there's been a lot of chatter recently about the NRL potentially getting involved. They say they're interested. It'd just be whether the Super League would come to some sort of agreement with them. I guess from a League One perspective, if you were to put a pitch into the NRL, what sort of help would you like to receive from someone like the NRL coming in to invest in the sport?
I think the first thing I'd like to see is a strong leader like Peter V'landers involved in our game, and if there is a willingness, and I don't know whether there is or not, I don't sit at that table, but I'd certainly like to see a strong leader, as I say, a voice and somebody who's going to go out there and put himself on the line for the sport. That's the first thing I'd like to see, and I hope that as part of the process that Nigel undertakes, I hope that is something they look at. If the NRL were willing to come and share their experiences and maybe buy into us in some way, shape or form, I don't think we could, certainly turn that down. I think we'd have to look at that really seriously, because ultimately, and I appreciate the game and sport in Australia is on a different level anyway, because of it just is on a completely different scale.
It's a major game in New South Wales and Queensland,
But that said, there's no reason why, we can't replicate that success across our sport.
We've got a big enough population, haven't we? If we can get enough of them interested in rugby league to start coming to games and watching on TV.
Well, we've got the product. Ultimately, we have the product. We showed that in Las Vegas. I thought some of the rugby league that Wigan played was outstanding, and the product's great.
It was. But even some of the recent Super League games that have been on TV have been thrilling games, haven't they?
Absolutely.
The Hull Leigh draw, recently, for example, which was had some thrilling rugby and was also very controversial, in parts, mainly due to the video referee decisions. But
and the club, let's be honest, the guys in Super League, Mike Danson's come along at Wigan, and he's, Wigan are going places, aren't they? They're producing on and off the field as far as I can see. Derek's doing his thing. He's brought David Armstrong over. Yeah. So the clubs are doing their bit, and they're they're investing in the players and they're putting the product out there. From what I see, the game day experiences are improving. They're wrapping things around a match day.
Well, if we had 12 clubs like Wigan, Andy, we wouldn't have much to worry about, would we? Really?
We wouldn't. The game would be in a lot better place. And I mean, if you wind it all the way back, Martyn, let's be honest, they were they were the only full-time professional club before Super League.
Yes.
So Wigan have always been that way. They've always been the biggest. I know that people will probably shoot me down from Leeds and other places, but Wigan for me have always been the
number one club.
The number one club.
Look at their trophy. Look at their trophy cabinet.
Absolutely, and Maurice Lindsay back in the day, he was out there as a leader, wasn't he? And he took the game the way he took it, and we were a full-time sport because of that.
The interesting thing, though, about all that, you're absolutely right about it, but of course they had that fantastic period of success from the mid-80s to the mid-90s. But at the end of it, they lost their stadium because they spent more than they could afford to. And eventually, they couldn't... the debts overwhelmed them. And that thought struck me recently when I was looking at the proposals for Manchester United's new stadium with Jim Ratcliffe, who I think comes from not very far from here, does he? I think he was brought up in a council house in Oldham, but has done incredibly well. But he was saying that the club is £1 billion in debt, and without some of the changes that he's brought about, the cost-cutting exercises and so on, it could have almost gone into liquidation by the end of the year. And so size is not a guarantee of financial success, is it? And trophy winning isn't a guarantee of financial success.
An unsustainable business model is an unsustainable business model, whether that's a small business, medium-sized business, or a large, global enterprise. If it's unsustainable, it doesn't carry on forever. And I think that's the key. Something that I've always pushed in every club I've been involved in. I've always pushed the sustainability aspect of it, and we do here. There's a difference between sustainable and self-sustainable. Those are two different things, and clubs most clubs have got a benefactor or owners who put in. We certainly do here, but that's sustainable because we commit to things that we're willing to underpin and fund. I would never commit a club to anything I wasn't willing to do, and I think that's the key. Is you'll never really truly have a sustainable club, because if Mike Danson's not at Wigan are probably not sustainable.
No, that's right.
Same with Manchester United. As you say, that's a different thing altogether, I suppose, because they're a profit-making organisation, but have a serious amount of debt leveraged against it. Don't
Absolutely,
I think it's the debt that's probably crippling United. But for me, sport, it's that challenge and balance of being able to invest and push a club forward without bankrupting it, and that's why it's not self-sustainable. It's sustainable, and those two things. Sometimes you speak to supporters at forums, and you can mix up that really, whether it's sustainable or self-sustainable. And I always have to explain that Rochdale's sustainable here because of myself and the other shareholders and owners who are willing to underpin it financially.
Absolutely.
If we walk away tomorrow on what we've committed to this year, it wouldn't be sustainable.
No.
But we always, on an annual basis, we will set a budget, and whatever that number looks like that we need to fund, we guarantee we fund it.
Absolutely.
The problem lies when people set budgets and can't underpin it, and
absolutely
ultimately it fails, doesn't it? By the wayside.
Funny enough, talking about the NRL, I always remember reading back in, I think it was the 1970s. In those days, clubs were completely independent, self-standing units. I think there were 12 clubs playing at that time, and for the first time ever, the Australian Rugby League did a survey of their financial planning and budgeting and so on, and they discovered that of the 12 clubs, I think it was something like 10 of them were budgeting on the basis that they were going to win the grand final that year. And it was just talk about unsustainable. And it's true. Sometimes clubs can just drift off into the realms of fantasy budget planning, can't they? If they're not careful, and if you don't keep a close hold on everything that's being spent.
And it's not a nice place to be. I've gone into clubs where we've had to pick up a financial mess and difficulties, and they're not easy things to navigate.
Not at all, no. And, no, because you've then got people coming up from all sides claiming money off you that you didn't even know existed.
We took Swinton over, and there was 6 figures of debt. I took a club on with 6 figures of debt, and that you do have those initial nights and days that you get involved. You have some sleepless nights because you think, although you always have a plan, every plan has a flaw as well, and
it does.
You always a plan. To execute a plan is different to drawing a plan, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
So there's challenges in operating rugby league clubs, and certainly in recent times because of the loss of funding to the sport. While Super League clubs will argue that they've had significant cuts, it's all pro rata. The League One clubs have lost 80% of the funding.
And
as we said,
it's amazing that we've not lost any clubs, actually, isn't it? I mean, we did lose London Scholars, didn't we?
We've lost a couple, haven't we? Yeah. Was it West Wales who went as well?
Yes.
But yeah, we've done well to and I think that's the beauty of this game is that certainly when Newcastle were having difficulties, I reached out to Jordan. I know other clubs did. We do try and work together. There is a camaraderie. I get on well with John down at Cornwall, and if ever we as clubs can support each other, I find 9 times out of 10 we all work with each other.
Do you have a dual reg relationship with?
We've actually duelled this season with Oldham,
right?
Because they're in the higher division.
Yes.
It made sense from the local sort of area for the players if they do come over. Gary, our coach, is not a massive believer in dual reg. I think he likes to give our own players every opportunities, and I fully support that because that's the correct way of doing it. But it was more of a insurance policy really for injuries, suspensions, obviously, to work with Oldham. As a local club, it made sense rather than them sending players up to Cumbria or down to Cornwall. If they can send them across to down the motorway 5 minutes down to Rochdale, it makes sense, doesn't it? So
it certainly does.
We'd like to, obviously, the first protocol is always to give your own players every opportunity, and you'd like to be successful with your own players, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Can I just ask you about one other thing? Obviously, we're sitting here in this with our backs to the pitch outside and so on, and it's a shared stadium. Originally, this is the Rochdale Football Club Stadium. Hornets used to have, as I think I've already said, the athletic grounds, I think they were called. What's it like as a club sharing a stadium, that actually doesn't belong to the rugby league club? I don't know what the ownership structure is here of the stadium, but do you find you've got a good relationship with the football club and everything works smoothly?
We have now, yeah. I mean, the stadium is 100% owned by the football club. There's no other party involved in it, so the football club own it outright. They're our landlord, essentially. The relationship is really good. They were taken over last year by the Ogden family, and Sir Peter Ogden was born in Rochdale. The Ogden family have come in, and they're looking to really engage the community, really do something special for Rochdale. And my early meetings with Cameron Ogden and the Ogden's representatives and things have all been really, really good and positive, and they're supportive of Hornets and the relationship day to day. We have a general manager, Matt. Matt gets on great with the people down here. They all work together, so while it is, obviously while it's not our stadium, if there's if somebody needs to put the covers on the pitch or do all the little things that need doing, we muck in, we all buy in together.
Sure.
There's a real camaraderie, the ground staff are fantastic, and yeah, I always touch wood because you never know what's around the corner, but the relationship certainly with the Ogden family and the new regime is fantastic, and I'd thank them on public record for that. Yeah,
the clubs support each other, and I think they're in the National League, aren't they? Rochdale Football Club, and doing reasonably well in it.
We are fully supportive. We want to see them again. It's like we're referring back to the game. For us to be successful, we need everything in Rochdale successful, don't we? We need the football club they need to be in the Football League. They're in the National League at the moment, but it's a Football League club, and one that I believe that in recent times has been in as far up the pyramid as League One, pushing Championship. If they can get back to that, and ultimately their revenues are coming, greater numbers of people are supporting, greater numbers of revenue. they're in a good place. We're growing on the rugby side, and we're bringing crowds of 1,500 in.
I was going to say,
everything's growing.
Can you get some of their football fans supporting you as well, do you think?
We've tried, and I think that's a two-way street as well. The conversations I've had with the football club's management and board is about, we've ran promotions last year. We did something that Matt came up with, to be fair, because our general manager is actually a Rochdale AFC fan and a Hornets fan. He's a true Rochdale lad, and so he wants both to succeed. And he ran a promotion last year, Double Dale, so on a weekend where we both played, and if both clubs, the football club and rugby club, both won, we significantly discounted the tickets the following week, Double Dale. So it was just a little bit of a gimmicky type promotion, but the intention was to engage the football club fans. As we come to the end of the current season, football season, we'd like them to carry on coming to the stadium to see rugby games. And equally, at the end of our rugby season, we'd like our fans to go and watch the football. We'll get more footfall through the stadium, more revenue over the bars, secondary spend. Everybody's growing, everybody's a winner. Happy. That's my mentality on it, really, and has been from day one.
Yeah, it's nice to see that collaboration. I think there should be more. I think teams could take advantage of that a little bit better, that cross promotion. I think sometimes we focus too hard on, say, us, versus rugby union, or us versus football. We should all come together and get as many fans through the gate as we can.
Absolutely, yeah.
Certainly, when you're in a town and a borough like we are, ultimately the winner has to be Rochdale. The people of Rochdale have to be the winner, not a specific club or sport. And I think that, from what I see and from everything I've read and heard from the new ownership of the football club, they're here for the community of and the communities of Rochdale, and for the wider sporting opportunities to bring education, all kinds of different things to the borough, and that's fantastic because, I just believe that the potential in this particular borough is there for all to see, and I don't think the football club have tapped into it previously. I don't think the rugby club has, and I think if we all can, then we could be talking about Team Rochdale in the next 5 to 10 years to come.
Hopefully rising up the ranks.
And rising up the ranks and having two clubs that are befitting of such a big town and borough.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Definitely. Anything else you want to touch on, Matt?
Well, I think that's a while now. That's a great point at which to end, isn't it? With a look towards the future, hopefully a very positive future, hopefully with you still here, Andy, piloting that rise, and starting this year, of course, with getting into the playoffs, hopefully, and maybe even being in the championship next year.
Yeah, I think the championship is where we ultimately want to be, but again, because we look at everything on a sustainable level, I believe that when we go into championship, we've got to be able to go in and compete. I don't want to go
tough,
in and get flogged every week, 50, 60 points, come back down in a worse place. So when this club does go into championship, and that might be next year, it might be 2 years' time, 3 years' time, I want to go in and compete. And we're not going to do, we're not an Oldham. We've not got the finances to go and throw at the squad like Oldham have done to go in and push at that top end. So we've got to generate that, and we've got to. The first step is get 1,500 bums on seats here. Because to be a good championship solid club, you've got to be minimum of 1,500, 2,000 people in your stands, I believe. So we'll build that first, and then we'll go to championship and compete. That's the plan.
That sounds great.
Absolutely. No. Well, thanks for joining us and having us today here, Andy, mate. It's
Thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure, Andy.
As always, Martyn. Yeah, thank you
for the rest of the season and beyond.
Well, started well. Just keep that up, mate.
Yeah.
Just keep rolling. Yeah, there'll be ups and downs as there always is, and I think that's the key. Is you don't get too high on the highs and never get too low on the lows, do you?
Absolutely. Great stuff. Mate.